Namaskaram. Hi, Ernesto. Hi, Michael. Hi, José. Today we have a question that says like this: how can the conviction that all this is a dream be developed more powerfully apart from the practice of self-inquiry itself?
Well, the answer is contained in the question. That is the most effective way to strengthen the conviction is the practice of self-investigation. If we are excluding that, then the most we can do is to think deeply about Bhagavan's teachings, to understand that is to do deep manana, to consider what evidence we have that this is anything but a dream. And that is, if we think about it, a dream is a much simpler state, or it's a much simpler explanation of our experience. In dream, we experience all the same type of things that we experience here. But if we say it's all a dream, that means none of it actually exists. The only thing that exists in the dream is the dreamer. The dreamer is seeing itself as all these things. So to say it's a dream is a very simple explanation. If we say, no, it's not a dream, it is a waking state, then if it's a waking state, then we have not just one person seeing this, we've got a multitude, so many people are seeing this, and then as they would say in philosophy, the ontological landscape becomes extremely complex. There are so many things. This world is existing independent of ourselves, so there are all sorts of there are so many galaxies, there are so many subatomic particles, there's so many, you can go on and on, investigating. There's no end to the complexity of things if you accept that this is not a dream. If you say it's a dream, then there's no complexity at all. There's simply the subject, namely the dreamer, and everything that is dreamed, all the objects, the phenomena. And those objects are nothing but a creation of the subject. That's a very simple explanation. So which is more likely to be true? A simple explanation or a complex explanation? Obviously, the simple explanation is more likely to be true than a complex explanation. Because the complex explanation, you're assuming the existence of so many things whose reality you do not actually know. So if we think deeply about it, there are so many reasons for, though we can never prove that our present state is a dream, even in a dream, we can't prove our state is a dream. There's no proof as such, but if we think about it deeply, it is far more likely that this is a dream than that all this is true. But if this is a dream, all we're saying is that we are there dreaming, and all this is just our own mental fabrication. That's a very simple explanation. Whereas if we say, no, this isn't a dream, all this is real, all this is actual, then we are assuming the existence of so many things whose existence we don't actually know. All we know, we don't know that anything other than ourselves exists. All we know is, oh, they seem to exist. This microphone in front of me seems to exist. This PC in front of me seems to exist. This body of mine seems to exist. All the thoughts in my mind seem to exist. That's all we can say about them, that they seem to exist. But just because something seems to exist doesn't mean it actually exists. So if we say all this is a dream, what we are saying is all this, though it seems to exist, doesn't actually exist. If we are saying, no, it is not a dream, it is all real, then we are imposing, that is, we are assuming the existence of things, but merely seem to exist. Just because something seems to exist doesn't mean that we have any evidence that it actually exists. The only thing that we can be sure actually exists is our own existence. Everything else could be just an illusion. But our own existence obviously cannot be an illusion, because who is seeing the illusion? I mean, who is aware of our existence? I am. So we must exist in order to be aware of our existence. So our own existence is Swayam Prakasha, it's self-shining. It's obvious. The existence of other things is not at all obvious. It may seem obvious. Oh, it's very obvious there's this microphone in front of me. But if we think about it deeply, how can we be sure that this microphone actually exists and is not just part of a dream? Not just it's all what I call this microphone is just a mental impression. I see it, so I have a visual impression of it. So I say, oh, there's a microphone there. And you can even say, no, it's not just seeing it. We're aware of the operation of this microphone. We can, if we speak into this microphone, we can record what is being said and we can hear it. So we've got evidence not just of our sight, but also of sound and other things. But all these are just mental impressions. That is, the only evidence we have of the existence of an external world is that we have sensory impressions. In fact, Bhagavan says in verse 6 of the world is nothing but these 5 kinds of sensory impression. But just because you have an impression of something doesn't mean it actually exists. And sensory impressions are impressions for whom? For the mind. So they're just mental impressions. In other words, they're all just thoughts. So why should we believe this world is anything but thoughts? And thoughts exist only in the view of the thinker. So to accept that all this is a dream is a far simpler explanation if we are willing to accept it. The problem, why generally it's not accepted that this is a dream, because generally we don't want to accept it's a dream. Then we have to question ourselves, why don't I want to accept this is a dream? Obviously, it's because we're still so attached to this. So doing manana in this way can help us a lot. But the real clarity, that is, we can get a certain degree of clarity from thinking deeply like this, but we get a far, far deeper clarity by practicing self-investigation, by turning our attention within to the source of all clarity, to a light that is shining in our heart, the original light, the light of all light, the light of I am.
Some Buddhist masters of the Theravada forest line said something that I think is complementary, no? To develop the clarity that this illusion, that this dream is a dream, try to find and discover the stress that is inside of all of thoughts, no? The inconstant of the thoughts, the transitive of all appearance that we see, and focus the manana in this convince that real this suffering, this inconstant changes, constant changes of all of this appearance. In a moment, you have the clarity that real, all of that is a dream. No, with the light of Atma-vichara is impossible. No, we know. No, but in the way that we are trying to stay more and more and more in the love for yourself, when we are outside dreaming that all of that seems to exist, instead of trying to confirm what we are thinking, try to look inside of these thoughts, the real suffering that is in the root of all the thoughts that provide from the ego. No? I don't know what's your opinion about that. Because I think that is not take other way. No?
Yes. I'm not sure if I understood correctly, but from what I understand about about the Theravadan tradition and Buddhism in general, there's a lot of emphasis on the impermanence of everything.
Yes.
Obviously, that is the case. I mean, Vedanta would agree, Advaita would agree entirely. Everything, all phenomena are impermanent.
Mhm.
That I think it is said, Buddha said, anitya, anitya, sarvam anitya. That's impermanent, everything is impermanent.
Mhm.
But it is true, all phenomena are impermanent, all objects are impermanent. So too is the subject, the knower of all objects. Because the ego appears in waking and dream, it disappears in sleep. So even this ego is impermanent. But, and Advaita puts emphasis, Advaita agrees fully with Buddhism on that. But it puts emphasis on, yet there is one thing that is permanent, namely ourself. That all these things come and go. All these phenomena appear along with ego in waking and dream. They disappear along with ego in sleep. But whether they appear or disappear, we always exist and shine as that fundamental awareness I am. That is our own being. That is permanent. That is unchanging. That is self-shining.
Mhm.
So Advaita puts more emphasis on that because it is certainly useful to recognize the impermanence of everything else. Because so long as we fool ourselves into thinking things are permanent, we go on after them. But when we clearly recognize that all these things are fleeting, there's nothing that we can hold on to that is going to last, but it's going to be a reliable refuge for us.
Mhm.
However much we may try to cling to wealth, for example, material wealth, or to knowledge, or to all that we've learned, all these things are impermanent. They all appear in waking and dream, they disappear again in sleep. And just because they appear in this dream, it's waking state, I may be a very rich or a very learned person now, but in my dream, I may not know anything, or I may be I may be a pauper. So all these things are mere appearances. So dwelling on the impermanence of things is useful, but we shouldn't stop with that. We then need to ask, then is everything is impermanent, or is there anything in our experience that is permanent? Yes, there is something that is permanent, our own being, I am. But I'm also changing. See, this body, one day I was, 60 years ago, I was a little boy. Now I'm an old man. So I've changed. So how can you say I is not changing? No, you haven't changed. It's the body that has changed. The mind has changed. All these are all phenomena. But even ego, the one who knows all these things, has changed. But the one thing that never changes is the underlying being. That is what is constant. However much other things may change, our being remains unchanged.
And the problem with these traditions so many times is that continues in a tendency for generations that until you can see absolutely, completely the absolute impermanence of all the things, you can't find what you really are, no? Yeah. And this have no sense. For example, Tulku Rinpoche, that is a very revolutionary master, no, in the Dogen, no, in the Dogen line, received too many criticisms because he said you can show the real nature, include your beginning in the path, and is compatible with Viveka, no? Or discriminate what is not real, what is appearance. Look that all of that you feel that is real in reality is a dream. It's compatible, no? Discover what you really are, and when you don't want to stay attending yourself as what we really are, try to put the light that the consciousness gives to the mind to try to understand that all of that is illusion. No?
Yes. But the problem with trying to understand all this is an illusion. The very fact that we're aware of it makes it seem real. For example, when we're dreaming, the dream seems very real. It's only when the dream is over, when we cease to identify ourselves with the dream body, but we're able to recognize the dream was all unreal. It was just a mental fabrication. So by dwelling, by attending to things that are unreal, we can't see through their unreality. They were, by our very act of attending to them, we make them seem real. If we want to recognize that all these things are unreal, if we want to actually experience that, we need to hold on to what is real. When we hold on to what is real, namely our own being, I am, ego will thereby subside in that, and everything will subside along with it. I mean, even to say it's all unreal is meaningless, because it doesn't exist at all. It has never existed. The truth is, there is no such thing as unreality, because unreality means what doesn't actually exist. What doesn't actually exist is not existent. It may seem to exist, but it doesn't actually exist. So there really is nothing other than what exists, what actually exists, and that is ourself. So Bhagavan's focus is entirely on our own being, because that alone is what is real. Yes, it's good to understand the unreality of other things, but it's useful to a certain extent. We shouldn't continue trying to understand more and more the unreality of these things. I mean, this is what this question is: how to get the conviction that all this is a dream. What we need a basic understanding, but though all this seems to be real, there is no evidence that it's actually real. So it's safe to assume that it's all a dream. Having understood that, we don't have to try to increase the conviction that it's a dream. What we have to do is to investigate what is real. If this is a dream, then it's all unreal. Then what is real? In all this unreality, what is real? Everything that appears to us is unreal. But one to whom it appears, namely ego, is unreal because it appears and disappears. Then what am I? So we have to go deeper within. That is why this question, the way it has been worded, in a way misses the point, because by adding, apart from the practice of self-investigation, that is the only way ultimately to convince ourselves that all this is a dream. It's not just a matter of getting an intellectual conviction. If we know ourselves as what is real, all the unreal things will disappear. Mm-hmm. So even to say it's a dream is only an intermediate teaching. The ultimate teaching is, it is not at all. It is Maya. As Bhagavan often said, Maya, I think there's a saying in Sanskrit, Yamasa Maya. That is, what is not, she who is not is Maya. So Maya means she who is not. So it's non-existent.
Yeah, go ahead.
The purpose of Michael, correct me if I'm wrong. I guess the purpose is just to create detachment.
Exactly. But then what are we to do with the detachment? The detachment will only be superficial so long as we gain it just by thinking about these things. Right. If we want the detachment to become strong, we need to hold on to our own being. Then these things will drop off and the detachment will become, automatically the detachment will be strengthened.
Right.
And ultimately, when we go deeper, what's it matter whether this world is a dream or real? We go beyond the need for even thinking about all this is a dream. What is actually real is myself. Let me investigate myself. Let me know myself. Let the world be real or let it be unreal. Doesn't matter to me. As Bhagavan says in the last line of verse 6 of Arunachashtakam, Nindrida Sendrida Ninevida Vindre. Let it go on or let it stop. It is not other than you. Not other than you means it is not other than the one fundamental reality. But he talked about in the first line of that verse. What is that? In the first line of that verse, he says, Undoru Porol, there is one real substance. Arivoli, the light of awareness. Ulam, the heart. Ni, you. So that is what actually exists. Ni is referring to Arunachala. You refers to Arunachala. So that alone is what actually exists. So let other things appear or disappear. What does it matter to us? As Bhagavan says in the 6th paragraph of Nana, however many thoughts arise, so what? We are not to worry about the appearance of the world. We are not to worry about the appearance of thoughts. The only thing we need to focus on is who am I? We need to turn our attention back within to see what we actually are. So it is a useful intermediate teaching to say all this is a dream, because that helps us to at least begin to develop detachment. But the deep detachment cannot come from merely reasoning about these things. The deep detachment can come only from going within and experiencing ourselves as we actually are.
Right, because when we first enter the teaching, we are so engaged in external activity with so many attachments and desires. So when we hear, no, this is a dream, it's if we are strongly convinced about, well, it's a reasonable doubt. So it's easier for us to let go a little bit, at least to the degree where we can now begin to look within.
Yes, this is why the emphasis on the unreality of the world often comes at the beginning of the text. If you read Uludunapadu, for example, in the early verses from 4 up to 9, and then a little bit further on also, Bhagavan is emphasizing the unreality of the world. That is the preliminary teaching. But what is the purpose of that? To take us to the deeper teaching, to know who am I? It's such a case in Uludunapadu. In Nana also, in paragraphs 3, 4, 5, he's very much emphasizing the unreality of all appearances, the unreality of everything other than ourselves, the world, second and third persons, other thoughts, they're all unreal. Likewise, in Guru Vachaka Kovai, the first 100 verses or so are all talking about the unreality of the world. So it's necessary at the outset to recognize that this is unreal. But we shouldn't just stop with that. We have to then apply that understanding. If all this is unreal, then what is real? Is there anything that is real? There has to be something that is real, because there couldn't be that is the very fact that things appear means that there's something must exist. So what is it that actually exists? If we think about that, the only thing that we can be sure exists is ourself. Our own existence, there can be no doubt about it. Because if we didn't exist, we couldn't be aware of anything. Everything else may be an illusion, but even to know the illusion, we must exist. And what knows the illusion is ego. Does ego actually exist? Ego seems to exist, but doesn't actually exist because it appears and disappears. But if even ego is not real, it doesn't exist, then what does exist? The underlying reality of ego, namely the fundamental awareness I am. That alone is what exists. So to withdraw our mind from other things, these teachings are useful, but they are a means to an end. We shouldn't take them to be the end in itself. So it's very useful to know everything is impermanent, everything is anitya. It's useful to know that all this is a dream. But we shouldn't stop with that understanding. We should go deeper to find out, okay, if all this is a dream, that means it's unreal. Then what is real? If all this is impermanent, then what is permanent? The aim of all these teachings is to draw our attention back to ourselves, because we alone are real, we alone are permanent.
So establishing, I think that's what you said is important. Is on this end, everything is unreality. The world, even our body, everything is. So the other counterpart must be real. Must be something real. So we'll have a good grasp of that, of what in consciousness plays a role, important role. Yeah, because the failure to see that, because usually we are engaged in our senses. So that's what, but that's secondary. The sense impressions are secondary. Yeah, it's consciousness what gives that light to the sensory organs. Yeah, so to fail to recognize that that's where everything lies, the importance of the appearance of this world and this body and everything. Yeah, that's because we have to hold on to something. Okay, that's unreal, but we need to hold on to something real. Otherwise, it's just maybe I'm unreal too. Consciousness is unreal or whatever.
Yes.
Consciousness cannot be. Ultimately, there has to be something real. That's ourselves.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, and also if we attach to the senses, to what our senses say, it makes no sense, because in sleep we think we are a body, sleep, and there is unconsciousness. But how can we exist without being conscious of ourselves? Yeah, as a body. I mean, in that sense, that cannot be, because that cannot be. How can something exist without being aware of itself? Yeah, the body, namely the body. Yeah, in sleep.
So this is what I think is.
We are assuming something exists without being aware of them.
Right. I think this is why it's very important to always remember this is a path of self-investigation and self-surrender.
Yes.
We are here to surrender ourselves. Our ego nature.
Yeah.
We who have so many interests in so many things, that has to drop off.
Yeah.
And also, sorry.
It's as you're going to end up with saying, we should not try to puzzle the unreality of the world out to an extent where it prevents us from surrendering.
Yes.
We are here to surrender.
Yes.
The question is when we are not really clear that we want to surrender. When we see ourselves that we want to surrender, but we don't really want to surrender.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a problem.
And this is when sometimes, and when you don't want to turn within, you only have the possibility to play help to Bhagavan, to understand the hidden value of these vasanas, to drop off.
Yeah. We may not want to surrender yet, but at least we have begun to want to surrender. That is, the very fact that we're here talking about this subject means we are already beginning to want to surrender. And this is the starting point. We have to, though we may not have the all-consuming love yet to surrender ourselves completely, this love is the way. We need to cultivate this love. As Bhagavan said, bhakti is the mother of jnana. So bhakti is essential. And that love begins by, first we are, what has attracted us to Bhagavan's teachings? Why are we so fascinated by Bhagavan's teachings? Why are we spending so much time talking about Bhagavan's teachings? because we know our present state is an unsatisfactory state. And we know that we won't find a satisfactory solution to this unsatisfactoriness in this state itself. So we're looking for something beyond. So we begin to recognize, yes, there is something beyond this, but there's a price to pay for it. What is beyond all this cannot be known by ego. So we must be willing to surrender this ego. So we begin to consider, yes, it is worth paying this price. We're still reluctant to pay the price, but we are begrudgingly admitting to ourselves now, yes, this price does have to be paid, and it is worth paying it.